My name is Narend Singh. I'm the Deputy Minister for Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment in South Africa, leading the South African delegation with a team of experts and scientists. And so far, I think as South Africa, we've found CITES to be very interesting, very invigorating, because we are allowed to present our views on certain species. And as you would know, South Africa had 4 proposals. 3 of them were unanimously accepted. We are also here to support our SADC parties and also Africa if we can reach consensus on issues.
If you could talk to us, please, about the proposals that you've spoken about. You had your proposals in South Africa. Which proposals are those? And did they make it through? Were they accepted? Were they rejected? And just an update.
Yeah, we had a proposal on Bontebok, which was this morning, and we were very successful in that. And what we appreciated was the compliments from all the parties that spoke, complimenting South Africa for the way they are dealing with this particular species, and the fact that from 1975 there were only 17 individuals. Now there are over 10,000 individuals, which shows that CITES listing in Appendix 1 way back 40 years ago helped, and it shows that CITES works. So we're very pleased with that proposal, which went through unanimous. And then we had 2 proposals on plants, plant variety species, which also went through unopposed, but there we wanted an Appendix 1 listing, which was accepted unanimously. And very few proposals are accepted unanimously. We withdrew a proposal which is listed in the booklet on abalone, because we felt just before we left that not enough work had been done back home. So we have decided to possibly place that after more discussions at the next CITES.
And talking about the Bontebok, Minister, there are those who are critics on the subject of sustainable use. So what you say now after this? Are you going to really get rid of the species? Is the species in danger? How are you going to manage the species so that it doesn't get extinct?
Well, the species is certainly not in danger. The fact that numbers are increasing, and the fact that there's proper management of the species in South Africa. Sustainable use is something that's spoken about written about in our constitution. So whilst we have an obligation to preserve this planet for future generations, which our constitution empowers us to do and behoves us to do, we also believe in sustainable use as we move forward. And that has been South Africa's position all along, and will be our position as we move forward in dealing with other species.
Yeah, were you really nervous? Because this morning prior to the meeting, there was an article from your country that was going hard on Southern Africa. So were you nervous about this proposal?
Not really nervous, because I think we've come here, as SADC countries and as Africa, to put science and lived realities before anything else. And when science indicates that there's a certain position that we have to take, we follow that. Yeah, I saw that article, and it is factual to the extent that the proposal on trade in ivory and in rhino horns
and giraffe.
And giraffe was rejected by CITES. And I think the general public need to know that there has to be a 2/3 majority here for those proposals to pass. But on the giraffe, I might add that we were very, very close. And if it was not for the abstention of the EU, we could have got a 2/3 majority, the proponents. And as I speak to you now, we have some of our scientists speaking to the EU about whether or not they would be able to change their mind on what we want to present. It wasn't our proposal, but it impacts on us in Southern Africa. And if we are successful in those negotiations, then perhaps we may ask that the matter be brought back to the plenary. So we haven't lost hope on the giraffe, but the other proposals on trade were defeated by a large margin, and I think Namibia doesn't have the appetite to bring it back onto the platform.
And talking about Africa, yesterday the caucus was having a meeting. It was very heated, 6 hours non-stop. What do you say about the conversations around Africa being united at this forum? or lack of unity, if you may?
Well, I think, what is unfortunate is that when there are discussions held on particular issues and proposals way back a year ago or possibly 6 months ago in our own country, in our own region, and positions are taken on those particular proposals, then it's unfortunate that when certain members from within Africa raise issues on the floor of CITES, those issues, I believe, could be raised within the African network even before we go to the floor, because then it shows a sense of unity. If we disagree, we can disagree without being disagreeable. And I emphasized that yesterday to colleagues that let us not do this again. We may have a difference in opinion which arises after we agree to a position because of new evidence that comes up, but don't raise it in an open platform. And I think yesterday's session was good in the sense that it brought us together. We reached consensus on most of the issues, except today. I think you also noted on the floor that there was a problem with the last sentence of the last paragraph on annotation, which was also raised by a member of Africa. But hopefully we don't do this in the future. And I'm very glad that the Secretariat of CITES clarified the issue of specimens and plants and derivatives on the floor, and Senegal and Niger accepted that particular proposal.
As you are speaking now, because the criticism is that the proposal from Africa, especially with respect to the horns, either from the rhinos or elephants, they were rejected because of lack of unity and science. So what you say to that?
Well, I don't think it was a lack of unity, to the extent that I think all of us in Africa are not up to the same level in terms of dealing with issues like illegal poaching and other issues related to trade. So I don't think it was disunity, but it was circumstances within our own countries or their own countries that would have made them come up with different positions. I don't think CITES is all about all of us agreeing to everything, but it's about all of us sitting down and having a proper discussion on matters. So there was overwhelming votes against the proposal, and I think we accept that. And I've said to our SADC countries in particular that when we go back early next year, we must sit down and talk about some of these proposals, so that when we come here, we come with a united front. It's always better to come with a united front and iron out all our issues back home before we come here. So I think in the run-up to the next CITES, whatever proposals we have will be discussed well in advance with all the facts that are available to us, so that we can come here as a united force.
But would you say that given the overwhelming rejection of the proposal around the ivory trade, it is a signal that CITES is allergic to the ivory market, to be honest?
Well, I think CITES is allergic to trade, and if one looks at the voting, I think it was about 30% that voted against the proposal. I can just check that here. On the elephants, we had about 80% that said no. On the other proposals, we had 74% saying no on the proposals with rhino horns. Also on the southern white rhinoceros, we had 68% saying no, 36% saying yes, and we had 18 abstentions. So if you look at the number of abstentions and the number of votes, there is an opportunity for us to come together and relook at the proposals, what's right, what's wrong with it, and try and fine-tune it, and talk to other countries as well. It doesn't have to be talking to them here at CITES, but we can talk to them in the run-up to CITES about why we think, like Namibia had proposed, why they thought it was necessary for them to get permission to have about 200 kgs of stock that they can sell, and they wanted to plow that back into conservation. So I mean, they made a very good argument, but perhaps it was not good enough to be accepted by CITES, and that's why it was not. So if we need to come up with better arguments for any proposal that we may have for or against.
But Deputy Minister, let's talk about communities. There is this feeling that communities are often forgotten here at CITES level, and there's a text around communities that parties cannot agree on. So would you say communities are often forgotten at this level?
Well, I must say that for South Africa, we can proudly say that every proposal that's brought here is discussed with communities, with scientific organizations, with academia, and all these proposals, go through that kind of process. And we even invite proposals from anybody on anything that can be placed here at CITES. Some of the proposals that we've brought come from academics, and they make a lot of input into it. We do not necessarily accept all the proposals because government has to come up with their position and see what's best. But communities do get involved. But I think for us in Africa, and sometimes some of the developed countries don't realize it, is that the way we deal with conservation, wildlife issues, sustainable use, is one that we ground in ensuring that communities can benefit. Because even if we look at the poaching that's taking place, whether it's rhinos being killed or whatever, if we don't involve communities in conserving these species, then we are in trouble. So in South Africa, we try and engage with communities that live around the game parks, etc. So if we have their buy-in, then I think we can succeed. But I think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done within that arena, because I've been involved in conservation now for over 30 years. When I was a MEC in KwaZulu-Natal in 1997, and I remember going to meetings where we would talk to communities about a rare species, a bird, let's say bird species, and communities would turn around to me and say, no, but that's food for us. That's protein. We don't have anything to eat. There may be others who've got food who don't want to eat this because they have other means to buy food. We don't. So I think there is a need for this education and what needs to be protected and why. And I think there's an increasing awareness in the whole of Africa of sustainable use and of empowering communities and taking communities along in whatever we want to do. It shouldn't just be science, but socioeconomic circumstances must also be considered in any of the proposals we make or reject.
My last two questions. The marathon conversation around elephants, are you happy with the outcome?
Yes,
and I like the fact that you threw in the aspect that you're part of the negotiations on the formation of the South African Constitution, and I thought you brought that to the table.
Yes, I mean, negotiations are tough, and particularly in the African context. Like I said, this is my fourth CITES, and in three of them, at least in the other two of them, it was quite difficult getting South Africa, Africans, all of us Africans, to agree on positions. But sometimes some of the countries who are not range states seem to talk more than those in range states. Like on the elephant proposals, the range states, which includes your countries that I'm speaking to now on television, we make up 74% of the population of elephants, almost 344,000. Some of those country representatives that spoke may have 10 elephants, may have 20 elephants. And sometimes I was beginning to try to understand, but I couldn't understand, why is it that they are so vociferous in their objection to certain things when actually it's the range states that have to implement whatever comes up at CITES. And that's why I drove that point home yesterday, that let's give the range states an opportunity. And also, you cannot reach total consensus in many instances because these are sensitive issues, and as I say, lived realities and circumstances in different countries differ, but I think there must be a common understanding. So even when we drafted the interim constitution for South Africa in 1993, which I was a part of, and then we moved on to the final constitution in 1996, there was a phrase coined, sufficient consensus. We originally started with consensus, but we found that with parties from left and right and center, you couldn't reach consensus on everything. You reach consensus on the broad principle that democracy must prevail. It must be one person, one vote. etc., etc. But on the details, one could not. So we coined the phrase sufficient consensus. And this is why I said even yesterday that if we can get sufficient consensus in some of these matters, we must proceed. We must not allow one or two or three parties that have their own interest to hold back, what the majority say. I mean, that's what democracy is all about. And I'm glad that eventually we came to an agreement, but when I look at the issues that were raised in objection to the proposals that were tabled, I don't see a lot of merit in it. However, if we satisfied parties that were objecting and we gave them an opportunity to be heard, because that's important, you give everybody an opportunity to be heard. But what is sometimes distressing when you get vibes that some of the parties are not saying what they want to say on behalf of the countries, but they are being influenced by people outside of the process. We haven't got proof of that, but that's the rumor that goes around, that sometimes some of them get influenced by people from outside the process. And that should not happen. When we come here as representatives of a country, I represent my country and my government's position, and not any NGO or anybody else. We do take their points into consideration in reaching a decision, but we do not like exerted pressure and influence. For example, on the Bontebok proposal, which was unanimously accepted by parties, we had two different observer organizations, one speaking very negatively to South Africa's position, and the other speaking very positively. So you wonder sometimes, what basis, what foundation do they use to come up with their kind of comments? Because these were two organizations, and but there were poles apart in terms of what they thought about South Africa's biodiversity conservation and our biodiversity management.
Talk about the AGN. Are you happy with the African group of negotiators? For the first time, it came here.
Yes, I think it's a very good start. I don't think we expected everything to be, hunky-dory, if I may use those words. But I think it's a good platform for us to continue engaging, because it's only through engagement that we can reach consensus or sufficient consensus. And I think we must build on what we have moving forward. But it's a good platform. The SADC platform, I must say, is working very well, because I chair the SADC platform, and it works very, very well. Even there, if we have different points of view, we try and bring all the points of view together to reach a consensus position. I don't think that kind of situation prevails yet at the African Network group of negotiators level, but I mean, we are hopeful that we will get there.
We've been talking about the elephant in the room, and we also have growing numbers of rhinos, specifically in Southern Africa, and there's been a growing call for us to find ways to deal with the stockpiles. And obviously, I think you've mentioned how we're saying CITES might be allergic to trade. What are some of the innovative ways that we can now start managing our stockpiles? Are there ways that we can still generate financing for conservation through our stockpiles, even those that we harvest from dehorning, those that have died natural deaths? How can we manage them?
Yeah, that is a topic for discussion in our country, and it has been a topic for a number of years now. And I don't think we've exhausted all the views that are prevalent. But we need more money for conservation. Because I think in many countries, environment portfolios as such are the poor cousins when you look at a budget. Education, housing, crime and security, justice departments get more money. And I think it's because of the socio-economic circumstances that we find in our country. So, as you say correctly, we should think outside of the box on what we are going to do, because we have to reach a point when we come up with some kind of a decision. And I think that time is coming, and it's coming soon. And that's why I say in our own country, it's a topic of discussion. And we will continue talking. And once we reach some kind of consensus amongst ourselves as a government, then we would like to share that with other countries, to learn from them and to see what the circumstances they find themselves in, so we can then, have a combined decision when we come.
Indeed, I think